Reaching sexual mastery is about so much more than a few techniques and tips to use in the bedroom. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. It's Kirsten, your soon to be licensed therapist, and today we are exploring how to build confidence, channel your sexual energy, and show up as the man you want to be in relationships. To explore this level of sexual mastery, I have Doktor onto the show. He has his doctorate in clinical psychology, and he brings over 28 years of experience as a life and relationship coach to us today. You are going to love this. You guys, let's get some. Dr. Ray Doktor, welcome to The Naked Connection. We're so happy to have you here today.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
To you, what is sexual mastery? Like, what does that mean to you?
Sex, Thank you for that question. What's interesting is that I wanted to be asked that because
I
if
read your mind.
if primarily you have men listening to this, I imagine that they could have these thoughts. One is when they think of sexual mastery, it's what they can do to the woman to get her off. That's one. Number two, another person might think of sexual mastery as where you can somewhat be aware of your emotions better, to where you can last longer, to where you just have a better sense of self while making love to a woman. The third one might be where it's a little bit more where it's the tantric experience where the person is excited or they have the idea that they're going to be eye gazing with their partner, and when they make love, it's going to be an experience where they feel energy moving through both their bodies.
Mm.
And so all three of those they come from, I would say, a place of self mastery, because if you are emotionally sound with your sexuality, you're comfortable in your own skin, then obviously you're going to show up in a confident, strong, and masculine way that would probably turn on your partner without even, say, sticking it in or even the act of sex itself.
Mhm.
So my belief is that our true inherent sexuality is more of a vibration, such as I believe that um, more males are in the masculine, like just say like 80% of them. And I would say that women are primarily more in the feminine and like 80%. And that 20% is where we embody both masculine and feminine. And mastery would be this, is that both men and women can move into those energies in different times. And if it's the wrong time, you can experience, say, like a power struggle. As an example, if it's a woman who is also a mother and she is taking care of her children, believe it or not, that's not necessarily a feminine act. In fact, it's more masculine because she is in her head, she's protecting, she's guided, and so forth. So imagine like the outdated 1950s situation where the man's thinking, oh, she's going to be in her feminine when I come home. She's been taking care of the children. She's feminine. And he's not aware that, no, her body has been in the masculine. It might take a glass of wine. It might take dancing. It might take a piece of chocolate. It might be just her sharing how her day was with the children. And that will help her feel the connection to her heart. And usually women, for that energy to go to their vagina, it needs to start in the heart. And in the heart is where they go through the trust factor of like whether or not I'm trusting this moment or this partner. And if so, that's when maybe a woman might get aroused and so forth. Now, I just gave you a long answer, but if you put that all together, imagine being a man or a woman, but specifically a man, where that is what sexual mastery is. It's where you know how to dance in an energetic space to be able to get your woman to kind of feel more relaxed. You can control yourself so you don't, ejaculate too quickly. Um, and you can also do this in a space of confidence. And I guess you can say you can guide yourself in the bedroom and also in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. There's so much in all of that. Um, and I have never heard, it's so true, but I've never heard anyone describe being in that state of mothering, like that can actually be kind of a masculine
Hmm.
energy, like you're guiding, you're leading, you're protecting in that space as a mother. Okay. So in thinking of all of that and noticing, like you mentioned these kind of three ways in the beginning, and it sounds like the first one was like, what can I do for the person that I'm with? Like, what can I do for
Hmm.
her?
Yes.
And it's interesting because I know so many men like love to have that be the focus, and it's
Hmm.
coming from like such a kind and like wonderful place. And also I'm wondering, how can they shift a little bit to have it be a little bit more about what's happening within them?
It does take mastery in inner work. My current girlfriend, and when I say current, it doesn't mean I bounce from woman to woman. We've been together for almost 3 years.
Mhm.
Her prior lover, I imagine some men are thinking, "Wow, you're pretty open minded, or you don't get triggered." And I still get triggered, but um, this conversation we had because she's also a coach, and we talked about it, and it relates to your question. The person she was with before me, he also was an alcoholic. That was also one of the reasons why it just didn't work out. It was like an on and off type of relationship for just 9 months for her. And he definitely had like addictive personality. And she said that the whole focus was on like her, like that was just that was just his mission
Mm,
to basically excite her and so forth. And she said it felt more like it was about him. Like it
mm,
felt like at first it was like great because when you've never been with someone before, if they get you off or they just say try to give you some pleasure before their own, there might be this idea like, oh, he is selfless or she is selfless.
mhm,
But in time, you recognize, oh, this is also a way to avoid vulnerability.
mhm,
This is an issue with not being a good receiver, to where this is a person kind of in a hidden, insidious way is avoiding connection. Of course, this would be a lot easier turning the person on, being the gifter rather than the receiver. So she
mhm,
said in a very short period of time, it felt really off. And it was like it it didn't excite her because she knew he was in his head rather than in his heart, which where she would have felt the connection. Okay.
yes.
So
Yeah.
when so now for men, you ask that question, how do men arrive there? Is by arriving in the heart. It's first in the heart. And so
Mhm,
if you hate yourself, this is not going to make sense. If you hear this as, well, I'll just, fake it till I make it, it's not going to happen. You cannot trick a woman's body or intuition.
mhm,
So it's being able to sit with sadness, feeling hopeless, defeated, angry, and letting that pass through your body for you to arrive to a better space where your consciousness has expanded and you see yourself as a beautiful, amazing, worthy man. So
mhm,
it really starts with the inner work.
mhm,
Like meaning that if a man were to see a psychotherapist and they're not talking about anything has to do with sexuality, he is going to benefit with his sexuality talking to a therapist anyway as a
mhm,
side product of that experience.
mhm,
A lot of men are more and they look more for the new shiny thing. They don't like to sit with stagnation. The masculine likes movement and action. It's why oftentimes it's a very, I know these are generalizations, but you'll see also with men and women that if it's a woman who's more feminine and a man who's more masculine, she's trying to connect. She keeps talking. And even though like he has said already, I got it, I understand, or okay, I'll never do that again, she's still talking. He's waiting for a conclusion. He wants to move on to the next adventure or conversation. So, men are very quick to that. So to sit and have to work with something that's not bringing them pleasure, it doesn't make sense to
mhm,
them. Whereas I notice with more women who I typically work with, they're willing to sit with that because they're comfortable with it. As little girls, they would talk about what's going on and what they feel. As little boys, teenage boys, we didn't do that. It still doesn't happen.
mhm,
Even though it's more common where boys and young men can communicate and they're now being received. Still, like at the end of the day, this is a generalization, but I know people who could be honest will say, yes, you're right. I shared this on a different podcast before, and that was where I shared if it were a man in a cubicle at the office and he just looks sad and he's just crying and he's just down on himself and he's pessimistic, there's not going to be women who are attractive walk by and go, oh, I'm looking forward to going on a date with him. I hope he asks me out to. I look forward to taking care of him. But if it were an attractive woman, she would have all these rescuers. She'd have a bunch of men trying to fix her so, they can maybe reap the benefits of her now thinking they're worthy or maybe sleep with them. Mm-hmm. So that is the same case when we're younger also. Mm-hmm. The boy who is all emotional and vulnerable and say wears his emotions on his sleeve might become like, the girl's like best friend. He gets put in the friend zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have these double standards in our collective consciousness. And so therefore, many men are going to try to choose that path that will help them score the girl, help them, get the promotion, help them be seen as more worthy and attractive. And it does make sense.
And kind of going down this path of recognizing, that double standard. And this is something that I know I've talked with a lot of just men in my life about, and clients and all of that and what have you, is like kind of seeing both sides of it and not really being sure of where to fall, like recognizing, okay, if I'm only in kind of traditional sense of like way of being, like that doesn't seem to work. But again, like you're describing, if I come over here to the other side, like I'm going to be friend zoned, I'm going to be, looked at like the guy that nobody wants to really go out with. So like, how do I find my way into some kind of middle, or like, what does that look like?
It goes right back to, again, the self-love. So first off, when I communicate, when I share, there are some people who will just, I would say, give lip service. They say, if you do this technique, this strategy, then you'll get the girl. But more than likely, if you do get the girl, you're not going to be able to keep the girl because a lie is not sustainable. You know what I mean? So I'm all about authenticity. And so if a man is trying to change behavior and it's not authentic, it will show up as awkwardness. It will not work. Mm-hmm. So as far as back to the question about like, where is that balance? Again, if I were, and I'm just going to describe myself. Okay. So here I am, and imagine I am single now, and I ended my relationship with my girlfriend. First off, before I move forward, I would hope that I would do some introspection and see how I could have participated differently. So I can take the higher learnings from that, integrate that, and become a better person. If this happens, then what will happen with in my partnership, it should be a more expanded version of what I just had because I learned something. Mm-hmm. That's what relationships are for. So you need to be able to take the higher learnings and see how you can better yourself. And I'll tell you this is the quickest way to figure out your bullshit and get past all your personality friction points that push women and men away. If a man could call up 2 to 5 people, both men and women, and ask these questions. Number 1, what is working for me? What's not working for me? If you or me, what we do differently? And then the last one is a gift. Is there anything I've done to hurt you? How that person, and if you get up to 5 people respond, I guarantee they're going to point out the shadow. They're going to point out that personality friction point that pushes people away. Isn't that great feedback? What if it's like something that simple, and then you can shift that? But here's the thing. You're going to try to shift that behavior. I'll give you an example. My hairdresser she's really attractive, but she's guarded. And my girlfriend has been around her a couple times, and she said the same thing. She's like, as a woman, I wouldn't even approach her. Mm-hmm. And so she was cutting my hair the other day, and she said, I don't have men come up to me. She said, I'm used to that more in the city I don't know, it's just gone. But I was thinking to myself, like, I would never approach you, even though you're physically attractive.
Mhm.
You just seem guarded, kind of like a bitch face.
Yeah.
But she's not asked for my opinion, and I'm not going to give that to her. But my girlfriend picked up on it also. It's just more matter of fact. So just imagine that. If this person, just say the woman I'm talking about, my hairdresser, were to be able to like sit with that and then try to put herself out there. I'm going to put myself more open. When I go to the grocery store, I'm going to connect to my heart. When someone new approaches me, rather than be guarded, I'm going to remain curious. Now, if she were to like feel triggered still, if she were to feel that difficulty in her body to do that, she could pull out her journal, write down the first thoughts that come into mind, such as, I feel guarded because I don't feel safe. I guard myself because what happened to me in my childhood, and I was betrayed. That's what she needs to work on to become open. And so men listening to this, you can try to fake it, but if you're really being authentic and true to yourself, what will come out of that is those things that are actually blocking you. And that's what this is doing the shadow work. We call that shadow work. Oh, that's what, because her being guarded is not who she is. Her being guarded is a survival mechanism. And whatever we're operating in as far as a survival mechanism isn't sustainable.
Mhm.
It's coming from our fight or flight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
another long-winded response.
No, I'm loving this. And so because those questions, I'm like, I want to go after this recording, go and ask people those questions because it's such a practical way to get a really truthful insight into yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. And it's funny because I know our topic is sexual mastery and we're not talking about like the tips and tricks of sex.
Mhm.
And I've always come from this thought that, our sex life is directly connected to the rest of our life. So if we change our life over here, it's going to influence how we show up sexually
Mhm.
and vice versa. And so it's really interesting to look at this shadow work of connecting more to yourself, knowing more about yourself, and
Mhm.
how that will, it sounds like from what you're describing, trickle down into your capacity to show up in a different way in
Mhm.
your intimate world.
Yeah. Sexual mastery, like a, if a person has shame around their sexuality,
Mm.
then they're blocked no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're able to come easy. It doesn't mean, like, I know some women have sex like they're a porn star and they are so disconnected, so they don't really orgasm, or it's not as full and exciting as it could be because there's constriction in that. When the goal is, say, having an orgasm or trying to get the person off so they'll like you more, then you're not really present to the becoming of what could be that you haven't experienced.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and this is making me think, I've worked with a handful of clients that come in wanting to shift their sex life or their intimacy with their partner or their wife, and what ends up unfolding is it being this deeper work of looking at this reality that there are parts of themselves that they don't like or that they haven't wanted to face.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering if someone is tuning in and starting to kind of connect perhaps with some of this, like where can they start to, I know you just mentioned that practice of asking those questions.
Hmm.
What would be another pathway for them to start to unfold some of what that shame about their sexuality or just I mean the shame that might be living inside of them that's really blocking them and holding them back?
This is the perfect timing for you to edit in here a drum roll, and I pull out my book and I, in a cheesy
Perfect.
way, announce for only $1.99. But there's truth to that. So here, by the way, the name of the book is All It Takes Is One. Drop your one big hidden belief and master your life. I was
Mhm.
joking with Kirsten how I forgot the name of my book for the first 2 months. Um, anyway, so this book is actually a book and workbook. And
Mm.
so it's kind of a self breakthrough book. And I wrote this after 30 years working with clients, 6,000 clients, to see what really worked. And I can't replicate exactly what I do when I'm coaching. So
Mhm.
I try to, extrapolate like kind of what are the elements in which gets a person to the right place? And so that's why I wrote the book. And in there's 11 like main influencers that we all go through that shape who we are, such as religion, to our culture, to just even what we experience with our parents as far as what we were taught about sex. And this also includes that people who've been perpetrated. And so there's many reasons why people wouldn't be so open, say, sexually. And it really makes sense. So the way it's written in my book, there's questions you ask. And then you go through a process of turning it around and reframing it so you can have like a new love map that you can practice. But it kind of goes through the structure of consciousness. And what I mean by that, here's an example. I grew up with a father both my parents have passed away. My dad was Jewish. My mom was Buddhist. And I grew up in a conservative area. And I wasn't even aware of that. Like I just didn't know. I just know that I was the only kid, on my block that had Kiss posters with Gene Simmons spitting blood, because my parents were like not Christians. They were not afraid of the devil. And I saw my parents walk around nude sometimes. They weren't like covering themselves up, and nor were they hippie nudists like, hey, free love. It was just they were comfortable in their bodies. They were also older. My dad was like 45 years old. My mom was like 30. He was 45 when I was born. I think my mom was like 34. And they were just comfortable. Now think about that. They're nude and they're comfortable. Hear that again? My mom's not going, oh, my breasts are not big enough, looking at Instagram, oh, I'm not a model, I'm not that hot. She's a mature woman, and seeing her body in a very normal, comfortable way. My father also. Think about what that creates as a kid. I'm not feeling ashamed of my naked body, whether I had a little dick or a big dick. I'm more like, there was not, that conversation wasn't there. The energy was more like, we're humans, we're spiritual beings with this garment that we call our body. How beautiful. So that's an example. I'm sharing something like that's what I saw. Now imagine if, and this actually happened with my girlfriend, and she knows I share this stuff publicly. Her mother was an ex-nun.
Wow.
Yeah, ex-nun. Major sexual shame and everything. Never really overtly flirtatious and sexual. She married a man who was a in a closet gay man. So my girlfriend's father was gay and died of AIDS. That was kept a secret. She didn't know her dad was dying until like the last 3 months of his life. They had been living separately. Her mom and dad, they didn't have a sexual relationship. It was kept a secret. Could you imagine how much therapy she did? But so for her as a woman, even my girlfriend, she had to do a lot of work to just speak a sexual way, flirtatious way, because she grew up with a mother who just practiced more being quiet about it, had guilt and shame. So here her mother wasn't even teaching her how to be. Through mirror neurons, by observation alone, that we will pick up on those traits. So this alone, what I just shared, everyone listening to this, all they need to do is write down her mom and dad, get a piece of paper and write down dad, mom, what he taught me about sexuality, what I witnessed as sexuality, and just be very open. Don't vilify them. And you'll see this list. And if you're really honest, you might pick up on, God, I do that stuff. It's not bad or good. It's what you modeled. Yeah. And that's beautiful. And it's like, so, and if we don't work on that, that's what we can label as generational trauma. Because generational trauma doesn't have to exist if you break that chain, if you heal that. So obviously my girlfriend has broken that. Obviously, I've tried to continue that. Like my son is 10 years old and he is very comfortable in his body, very comfortable. And no, I'm not talking like in ways that are inappropriate, but he's very comfortable with his body.
Mhm.
Like, and it's not weird to him. He's very kind of funny about it. We keep it kind of goofy and
Mhm.
light. And
Yeah.
I preserve that innocence for him. Like I'd rather him like look at me and go, look at those boobies, rather than approach it from like a dark secret place to where he's fantasizing, he's watching some dark porn, or he's been taught that like you're supposed to like lick those titties and some weird stuff. Like I'm more when I communicate with him, I'm very open. I come from a medical perspective, I come from a dude perspective, I come from all of those perspectives, and I also share with them how the rest of the world can maybe feel about this.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
even told them in our area where I live, this is like the healing mecca. There's a lot of wounded women here, a lot of single women here, a lot of women who've been perpetrated, a lot of women here who talk a lot about narcissistic men.
Mm.
So we see that show up in the children. They're wounded, and it sucks. He's around boys his age who carry their parents' wounds. We can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So I mean, as you've been describing kind of what unfolds in your book, it sounds like there's a lot of, I'm sure, topics and questions of, I mean, just even understanding like, oh, how did our parents show up in their own bodies? Like what was being said about
Mhm.
sex growing up in the household. And I'm sure even like more subtle things too that we don't even recognize
Mhm.
unless we really take a microscope to inspect and understand, oh, this might be why I do X, Y, and Z. It sounds like this could be a really beautiful practice for someone to go through alone and also like in partnership. If you do it kind of together or come together and share what you are finding along the way, could be an interesting experiment. I I always have found it so fascinating in just understanding and talking with men about, their first introductions into sex, whether it was, masturbating secretly alone in their bedroom and like hoping no one finds out, or, you know, the first time they had sex and just what that creates within them as their starting point into the rest of their life, and how that can really, if it's in a healthy, beautiful way, be really powerful, or if it's in a kind of that dark, hidden way, can be really detrimental to what unfolds for them in the future.
Yeah. Well, the whole impotent thing or premature ejaculation thing,
Mm,
I worked with many men with that, and some of what had come up with some of them was that they would actually do it in a bathroom while a sister's knocking on the door, or they're
mhm.
trying to do it just to not get caught. Now, imagine the pattern. I need to jack off. I can't believe I moved my hands. I gotta, I gotta jack off really quickly so they don't find
Mhm.
me. Think of that message. Then this man's trying to make love to his woman. He can't even last.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
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 Even this, like, so, my girlfriend's son is uncircumcised. My son is circumcised. We share what that means. But imagine even a little boy going, why does your PP look different than my PP? And
Mhm.
parents not talk about it. Something
Mhm.
must be wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's little things like that.
Yeah.
And being ashamed of that private part. And
Mhm.
then disconnecting from that private part because it looks different than your other boys' private parts.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we need to be open and transparent about these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple of urologists on the show, and people that work specifically with men struggling with porn usage, and just in understanding that at a young age when boys often start watching porn, that they're not fully developed, and that here they are watching these porn stars that have these massive penises,
Mhm,
and coming to grow up thinking, oh, like my penis is really small.
mhm,
And even though most of the time, a lot of the urologists are like, you're an average sized man, you're fine. And so
mhm.
just the disproportion that can come from some of our early experiences and like what that does mentally to someone
Mhm.
and blocking their confidence within themselves. It's really fascinating.
Yes, well, I would say most men want to have a large penis because it's what they've seen. There's
Mhm.
the idea of being able to maybe to conquer with it, but primarily the idea that women will get off on that easier or better, and it's not true. It's
Mhm.
not true at all.
Yeah.
And so, of course, if a man, there's not a lot of them, but of course, a man is like really, really like small. Of course, she might not be able to get his woman off through penetration alone. However, like if you know where her G spot is, her clitoris is, if you know how, if she feels ultimate trust and she can surrender in her heart to you, there's so many ways to excite her. It's not just focused on one thing, such as penetration.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So, in thinking about this building of confidence, like where does somebody go from here? Maybe they've gone through your book and they notice, oh, this is why I am the way that I am, or these experiences have shaped me in this kind of way. What is the beginning to undo that, to either end that generational trauma or just start shifting into a more embodied, confident man that can live within his heart?
Well, it's obvious that they can reach out to you since this is your field. So reaching out to someone that you feel comfortable with. I know
Mhm.
some men are uncomfortable working with a woman with a woman. I've heard that many times. To even like, I don't know if this happens. Do you have men that fall in love with you? They kind of project stuff onto you, like motherly energy, girlfriend energy, or whatever. They start feeling better,
Mhm.
and they maybe you can sense like it. Well, I'm bringing this up because, as you know, they don't really know you. As
Mhm.
you know, like they're more what they're feeling is what's coming up in the sessions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
love. Is that interesting?
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like they're starting to feel themselves, but rather than project it out onto the coach or therapist, what does that feel like? What is that good feeling? That feeling that you think that is coming from Kirsten, that's yourself. How does that feel? What if you could feel this way, every minute? What if you could feel this way even when there's challenges? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's really getting men to feel and identify it and so forth. So I would say the steps would be: first, you can reach out to a coach. Number two, there are many books out there that explore this. I worked with Montauk Chia directly. He's like, I would say, the grand master of Taoism and I guess I don't know. I know he's like he knows his stuff, but but it might be a little bit too esoteric to read his stuff because it is like Chinese medicine. Um, but it's just don't make it so complicated. Just if this is intriguing you, just start writing it out in a journal and see what comes up and see if you can, you know, change something just within yourself. It's just recognizing that you're not alone
Yeah.
and that you can start anywhere. A
Mhm.
book, a coach, talking to a therapist. But the main thing is just you need to ask them whether or not they're comfortable talking about sexuality.
Mhm.
Because if you say call up a conservative Christian, um, they might be rigid. They might have thoughts like you shouldn't have sex unless you're married.
Mhm. Mhm.
So make sure the person's aligned.
Oh. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I think exploring with other people can be really helpful. And I'm not just saying that because I am a coach becoming a therapist, but it is always nice to have that mirror, whether it be a friend or someone, maybe a lover that is open to sharing and holding that up, that reflection to be able to see yourself a little bit better. Um, yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yes, sex. I want to bring something up because it's funny when I have these conversations. I sometimes wonder if, say, people from my hometown or people I know listen to this because I don't necessarily promote myself with my friends and acquaintances.
mhm.
But I wonder if they're thinking, "Is he talking about me?" Uh, I I know, like when I'm at least I can pick it up in
Mhm.
women when they're closed off in their body.
Mm.
And my girlfriend has brought me around some of these women, whether it was an event we were both at and they happened to show up. Many of them were clients. And it's not like she breaks confidentiality, but we've had the same friends. And without her saying anything, I've said, don't tell me she blah, 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 blah. Like
Mm.
there's must have been some sexual abuse to, she's really guarded. Every time my girlfriend would say, how do you know that?
Mm.
I said, I can pick up on it in her body.
Yeah.
It's there. There's a trauma response in the way she behaves. There's a
Mm.
trauma response in how she behaves.
Mm.
And so, reason why I'm bringing this up, and it's utterly important, is that what if the men listening to this, you have a trauma response to approaching sex and you don't know it?
Mm.
You know, what if you come off as anxious because there's some anxiety, like you're going to perform long enough, you're not going to be able to keep it up, to there's like this fight or flight thing going on, and then you just go limp,
Mm.
you
Mhm.
know? So it's important to recognize that if you have friends you trust who are uh, not biased, if you have ex-lovers who are
Mhm.
willing to say, yeah, I felt this with you, you just seem to rush. You know, if and here's the thing, they're ex, so how can they hurt you again? I mean, like, I just think there's just so much great value in the feedback by someone who's actually been with you,
Yeah.
and discover ways that you maybe are blocked in your body
Mm.
and you show up in a trauma response. I have had just two women, tell me that I could be more relaxed when I kiss.
Mm.
And the first time was when I was 26. And then the next time, I didn't really hear it as feedback. And the next time was like early 30s.
Mm.
And sure, I didn't like it, but there was truth that I clench. Like in general, like I would clench. You know, my father was in the Marines. He kind of had this very stoic kind of, and I picked up on it. So when I would kiss, I guess I would hold my jaw. And
Mm.
so they'd feel the tension in my face. They wanted me to be open. They didn't say, you suck, you're horrible as a lover, to, ooh, fuck your integrity and confidence. The way you kiss is just, I can't handle it. They shared that because they liked me. They
Mm.
shared that because they could trust that I can handle it. And
Mm.
that's what will make you the most attractive man, is when a woman can say anything and your heart doesn't collapse. You don't
Mm.
get reactionary. You don't
Mhm.
get defensive. You hold that space, and whether it's true for you or not, you don't have to get defensive. And if it's true, then it's like, how can I integrate that in my body so I could be a superior lover?
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, it's like coming from a place of receiving that feedback. I think of it like if I didn't care about somebody, I wouldn't take the time and face the reality of sharing this hard information with them. Instead, I would probably just say something like nice and kind and move along if I didn't really care. And it's interesting to hear this piece of receiving that and being able to stand in it and take it as, oh, this person cares about me and they want this to be a better exchange between the two of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I shared maybe one of the most uncomfortable things to an ex-girlfriend. It's not why she became an ex, by the way. But within the first 2.5 months of dating her, I really liked her. But she always had like this bad breath.
Mm.
And I constantly like was giving her like these natural mints and stuff. And she wasn't getting a hint from that mint. And then I approached her in a way. I had to take that chance, and that was this. I like kissing her, and if she were someone were to be with forever, then I
Mm.
would. This would be kind of a deal breaker. It's like hygiene. It's like, and it might be something that could be rectified really easy. Yes, I was uncomfortable, so I played it out. I talked it out with some of my male friends, and I went for it. And what I said was, I love kissing you. You're absolutely beautiful. And when I see your face, I just want to kiss you. I go, have you ever noticed I give you mints often? Yeah. She goes, what are you saying? She started kind of laughing. I said, well, I don't think, I don't know what's going on. I said, but there's somehow I noticed almost immediately after that, there's like this certain smell, and I don't think it's your breath. And I said, I don't know if you have a sinus infection or what it is. And she actually took that well. It was uncomfortable at first. She actually saw Dr. Joe, my herbalist. Sure enough, she had a sinus infection.
My gosh.
And she had one made for a couple of years. So she started taking his herbs. Within the fourth day, she said, Ray, I'm starting to smell my food again.
Oh my goodness.
My appetite's coming back. So what if she broke out from me, but she could smell better and eat and smell her food? For me, that would be worth it. To help another human out with my honesty, even if it meant her breaking up with me, so what?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would want someone to say something to me if I can improve myself or health. And it was a sinus infection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. I always come from this thought that clear is kind. And in so many ways, what you just described is such an example of how when we are able to face being really honest in a loving way, what can come from that. And I'm sure I would be curious to know how you walked away from that feeling. Like, did you feel more
Greater
comfortable?
trust, like more of a more attracted to her.
Mm. And how did you feel about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, if I'm gonna reap the benefits, then, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I am so appreciative of you coming on the show and going into these places with us today. Is there anything in this topic of sexual mastery, everything that we've been talking about, that feels like you want to end on or share with the amazing men here?
Um, yeah, sorry, I just had my client show up. He's like really early. So
No, you're
anyway,
good.
you see that, like, kind of like trying to
I know
get
you're
him
like,
up.
"Ugh, it's
Yeah,
fine."
like set up. So, yeah, I'd like to offer my book.
Mm,
Uh, you have a link. Right now it's being offered on um, Kindle for free right now. And there are links to my website, where I also have a group coaching call that is starting next month. And you can find that of value, such as if you heard some of this and you want to know how coaching works, rather than watching YouTube video or thinking about it. You can actually see an actual experience, because I get people on a Zoom call and we work through things just like this.
amazing. Amazing. Well, Dr. Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show. You shared such incredible examples, which I think is a really helpful way to kind of grasp some of these larger concepts when it comes to feminine and masculine dynamics, relationships, and how really learning who we are and better understanding ourselves directly influences our capacity to show up as lovers in this world. So, thank you so much for being here and taking this time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.